What's going on, everybody? It's Brandon from the Cultural Center, and this year I'm excited to say we're leveling up the way that we celebrate Women's History Month, also known as Women's Appreciation Month. We're doing that by celebrating and appreciating a few wonderful women in and around our Louisville campus and community. You're going to see their stories through these interviews in just a few seconds, but before we get there, got to give a huge shout out to Corinne for doing her research on these folks and coming up with great questions to bring out the motivational spirit in them to inspire you. Thank you so much, Corinne, and we hope you all enjoy this. Good evening, afternoon, morning, midnight, whenever you're seeing this, because YouTube has no time zone. So, my name is Brandon Bailey. I'm the assistant director at the Cultural Center, and we are celebrating, as we do every year, Women's Appreciation Month / Women's History Month. And this year, we're taking things a step further and actually celebrating people who are on campus with us. So our everyday heroes, our everyday sheroes, who are doing amazing things on campus and within our community as well. So today we are celebrating Mónica Negrón, and we're happy to have her at UofL, and we're happy to have you get some of your free time today. You're very busy. How are you today?
I'm doing well, just taking it day by day. It's
Mhm.
Monday. So when people watch this, it's a Monday morning. Just getting ready for the week. It's a busy week for us in athletics. So, we're just attacking the day. It was a good weekend too. Men's swim and dive just won ACCs. Women's basketball just clinched ACC regular season. Men's basketball beat Duke. Baseball had kind of swept this past weekend. So we're all go cards up here.
Right. Yeah, everything is going well. Cars are flying high right now at the moment. Hopefully we keep that momentum going throughout the rest of the spring and summer seasons. So well, first off, before we get knee deep into some of these questions, so tell us the basics about you. So like where are you from, and how'd you get an interest in into sports?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Baltimore area. I played a bunch of sports growing up. My family's from Puerto Rico too, so very strong Puerto Rican background. I played probably every single sport you could think of. So starting at like 4 or 5, I did like t-ball, soccer, basketball, and then when I was probably around like 7 or 8, my dad was like, "Hey, I want you to play like all time sports." And all of the girls on your basketball team, they play this game called lacrosse. Again, coming from Puerto Rico, lacrosse really isn't very common there / not common at all. And he was just like, yeah, like, why don't you go play lacrosse? You play basketball. The lacrosse coach says that you probably would be like pretty good at it. So my dad was the one that literally kind of like told me to play lacrosse and bought me my first stick. And I remember my first practice, and it was just like throwing for the first time and like learning how to do ground balls. And I was like, Dad, that was so fun. I would have wanted to probably like kept playing softball. And my dad literally was like, no, you just go play lacrosse. You're supposed to be good at it. You're fast. It'll work. And so then played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse all the way up through middle school. Going into high school, I didn't want to play soccer anymore. It wasn't really like a passion of me. I wanted to just like focus on basketball and lacrosse. I didn't know what sport I wanted to play in high school by that point. And my dad was like, no, like, you need to play 3 sports. And I was like, cool, Dad, appreciate it. So then I picked up volleyball. So volleyball being a big thing in Puerto Rico, my dad kind of like taught me a little bit because I played basketball. Like I naturally had like pretty good hands, and then did a camp, and then just like learned how to play. So I was like, cool that I was started on JV. Just I was like learning on the games. And I got moved up to varsity. Again, this is like East Coast volleyball. It's not like the Midwest, not the South. So it's not just a bunch of girls that have been playing. But volleyball was probably the sport that I had the most fun because there was like no pressure.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to be playing in college. In hindsight, I wish I would have probably wanted to start playing sooner just because it was so fun. It came so naturally to me. I'm not tall, so I was either in college, I'd probably play like back row or something like that, like a defender type of thing. But I set in high school. And then probably like freshman or sophomore year is when I realized that lacrosse was my best sport. If I wanted to go D1, it was going to be in lacrosse, not basketball.
Mhm.
And then Louisville recruited me and I played, started 4 years, 3-year captain, all of that. Dewey's Player of the Year, All American my senior year. So definitely had a pretty good career, and kind of seeing my team really develop was super awesome. Like sophomore year, we were 3-12. Senior year, we were 16-4, made to the Sweet 16. So being able to be on a team, kind of see that development was super fun.
Yeah.
And then most recently, kind of came out of retirement, have some bad knees. So, hoping they kind of stick with me, but I'm on Team Puerto Rico and we will play in the World Cup in 2022. It was supposed to be 2021, but because of COVID, it got
Right.
pushed
Right. So, again,
back.
Women's History Month / Women's Appreciation Month. And we have the best in both worlds, best of both worlds right now in Monica Negrón, still making history, therefore much must be much appreciated around campus. So we might even have to extend these things beyond March, right? Because it's a lot of dope people in our campus environment and community. But right now, we ain't talking about dope people. We talking about how dope you are. So, wow, World Cup. That's big. That's major.
Yeah,
That's
so we'll
that's
see.
major. Wow. Okay, so um in a personal or professional sense, what issues would you say are important to you that make you use your voice?
Right. I think for me, definitely what I definitely use my voice is one, girls in sports, or just like sports in general. I think that's something that I am super passionate about, and just like teaching our future leaders and teaching definitely like young athletes and even young people in general. It's kind of the reason what I do. I want them to be not just good athletes, but good people. And so I am very passionate about like kind of teaching the next generation. Like people know in my program that I'm not just gonna like care about if you're like good at lacrosse. I want to make sure that you're learning how to work hard, how you can just be a good teammate too, and being super inclusive. I don't turn anybody down in my program. I obviously do have travel programs, but if a girl wants to learn how to play lacrosse, like I'm going to welcome them. I'm gonna always touch points with all people. There are a lot of times you might see like a club director, they only work with the top group. And I was like, no, I'm gonna know everybody's names from my scene, like from my juniors that might go play D1 to my like 7 or 8 year olds that are just picking up the stick. So I think that's something. And I think most recently, I've also been super passionate about just kind of having a voice for Hispanic and Latinx people in general, just because of the platform that I've created it, whether it's through sport, through athletics, working in higher education, just educating people about how different we are as a people, but then also saying that, you know what, like we're here. We need a seat at the table too. And kind of like showing that passion as well, just because my people are very, very proud. And I think all of us in general. So being able to connect with my colleagues, being the co-chair for our employee resource group for Hispanic and Latinx personnel, being connect with people that are similar to me because I played lacrosse growing up. So
Mhm.
lacrosse is it's very white sport. It's very like
Mhm.
upper middle class. So growing up, there was never anyone that looked like me. There was never anyone that had like very similar cultural viewpoints as me. Especially, I also grew up in the suburbs too. So that's just like a whole other thing of like, wow, like there's maybe like 9 Hispanic kids in like the whole school, and that's pretty much about it. And I think as I grew older, realizing how much of a like lack diverse environment that I grew up in when I came to college, I was like, wow, like there are people that are so different. Not everyone looks the exact same, dresses the same way. And I think through undergrad, and then kind of through grad school is kind of like an awakening, trying like I guess like find myself, figure out like what am I passionate about, what am I interested in. And I think in these past couple of years, even after those type of times, I'm like, wow, like I'm almost 30 and I now finally feel like myself and like happy about who I am as a person and kind of where I'm going. And so one of my passions is I don't want people to take that long to find themselves. And people see my resume like, wow, super successful, but I don't think I've been truly happy till like most recently. And being able to teach that type of thing into like my younger girls, our student athletes, any students I work with, like, you know what, like you can be whoever you want to be, and then like embrace that, embrace being different. So definitely all about like women's empowerment, inclusion, all of that kind of stuff, and just like embracing our differences.
Right. So you talked about embracing yourself and feeling um empowered within yourself and your own self-confidence. Um can you talk for a second about people who maybe served as role models for you throughout that path of getting to like where you are now?
Yeah. So my parents obviously are like probably like my biggest role models. Like my dad is like that is who I want to be. And then my mom is like my cheerleader. So whether it's like in life, whatever, like my mom's gonna like hype me up. She's also gonna tell me when I do something wrong too. So like that's really in a personal level. My college coach, she's someone that I hold to like the highest regard. She was tough, like she was a tough lady. But then she really taught me a lot about accountability. And I think I grew as a leader, kind of having that mindset of, I mean, she was very much black or white. Like if you messed up, like you were going to have some type of consequence. But if you did well, she was also going to reward that too. And my degree is actually in biology. My undergrad, I studied biology. I wanted to be pre-med up until my senior fall when I was like, not going to go to med school, didn't really do well on my MCAT, but then also realizing that was just something that Monica's going to be a doctor type of situation. It's not necessarily what I really wanted to be. And I remember being in my head coach's office and then just like breaking down. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do. And my coach is just like looking at me. She's like, well, wow, I know so much more about you now. This is so great. Like this all makes sense. And kind of having her support off the field too was something that for me was so valuable. And even like when she was tough on me as a player, as a leader, I mean, her expectations were high. And my goal was like, how can I reach that level? And she was amazing. And then my first two bosses were incredible.
Mm,
Um, called ourselves like I called us like the two blondes and Monica.
mm,
Both of them were former student athletes, did amazing things in their careers. And so I learned a lot how to be a professional from both of them. They both led in different ways. They both worked in different ways. One of them definitely kind of taught me how to really like resolve conflict. And like I would ask her questions of like, how did you deal with this situation and kind of go from there. And the other one really taught me how to be as detail oriented as I am. She's super detail oriented, pretty type A. And so then kind of working with that, and my college coach as well has made me like really attention to detail, kind of seeing the big picture, then also like getting things done. And then my current supervisor right now, and I call these all probably these friends, mentors, Alyssa Murphy, who works in athletics as well. It was Amy Calabrese, who was our senior women
mm,
administrator. She was my first boss. And then Christine Simatopoulos, she was senior staff before she left. And then Alyssa Murphy, who's the director of student athlete leadership and development. She is amazing, brings so much energy, so much wisdom. I know she's always there to support me through any project I want to do. And we blend so well and we work so well together,
yeah.
that I'm excited that I get to have these awesome women. And then, I mean, I've also had some like great males in my life too. So like shout out to the guys that like empower women too.
Yeah.
So I think whether it's like different coaches that I've had, other like colleagues that I've had, Marvin Mitchell, like he's known me since I was a freshman in college. So even he's seen me grow from like teenage me to like almost 30 me,
Yeah.
and kind of talking with him because obviously student athlete development is falls within academics. So once we kind of made that switch, he was like more direct work line with me. So kind of being able to grow with him has been really cool too.
Okay. And so you mentioned that you're breezing through your 20s and accomplishing a lot along the way. Um, in your opinion, what do you believe are some things that um, uh, are challenges for young women entering adulthood?
Yeah, so I think challenges for women entering adulthood, I think I think confidence is something that is learned. So I think that is something that a lot of times women can be like pretty combative to one another instead of trying to build one another. And I think looking to just grow, like, hey, like she's trying to do this with me too. So like, how can I empower her and how can I help? And I think another thing as well is learning to be good with who you are. I obviously look very young, and that's something that like I tend to like be conscious about. So if I'm once I'm like working in the office, like you'll always see me in a business casual, just because I know that I can blend in with the students. And I know great jeans, so not bad. Um, but that's something that I know for other women as well, that although sometimes you might be the only woman in the room, but you're there for a reason, and being okay with that. And if you're struggling, also being okay with that too. So I think that one, sometimes we don't set ourselves up to success. Like people say, like if a woman is applying for a job, if she doesn't have like 80% or 90% of the job requirements, she's like, oh, like I'm not qualified enough for it. But a guy might just like see like, oh, like I've done like one of these things, I'm just going to go for it. So I think trying to change that mentality in women, of most jobs you can learn as you go, and just being like, you don't get the opportunity if you don't try to go for it. Like if you never put yourself in, if you never like check into the game, like you're never going to be able to score, if you're never going to shoot, etc. So I
Mhm.
think teaching those different types of things of like, hey, this is where you're at now, and that's okay. But if you get put into certain spaces, use your voice when you can, and then embrace yourself.
Yeah, 100%. That what you just said takes me back to you may remember the Nike ad with Mia Hamm,
Mhm.
late 90s, early 2000s. Um, the song with it was anything you can do, I can do better. No, you can't. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can.
Yep.
Right. And so for our students who might have been born around this time, um, the US women's soccer team had won in dramatic fashion. Was it World Cup or the Olympics?
World Cup.
And okay, and so in a celebratory moment of sheer joy and conquering the mountain that all athletes want to conquer, which is literally being a world champion. Um, one or two of the players took their jersey off, right? They had on sports bras, and it was a whole thing. And like Time Magazine had stuff to say about it. Everybody had an opinion about it. And then like 2 or 3 months later, um, Nike, to their credit, got behind the team and got behind women. It was like, it's okay when, you know, Michael Jordan or whomever, Kobe Bryant at that time, or Shaq, they win, they pull their jersey out and they celebratory and they swing their shirt around their heads. Okay. When a man does that, but when a woman does it, like, not only is it not a problem, but we're going to celebrate them. And so the big figure in that ad ended up being Mia Hamm, who was one of the primary um players on the team. And so in the ad, I want to say it was like Tiger Woods, a very young Venus Williams, maybe Serena was in it, very young Kobe Bryant, and then um Mia Hamm at the very end. And of course, just do it, right? And that gets to all those things that you talked about, like being confident um, and not even necessarily just for women, but for young people in general, like being confident. And maybe you did miss 10 shots in a row. Maybe you did apply for 10 internships in a row and didn't get any of them, but all you need is that one. So I appreciate you being candid in talking about confidence in that way. Um, and I know that's going to help a lot of people. So if you don't know Monica Negrón, you're getting to know her now, and you can get to know her on campus. Shoot her an email if you're looking to connect. Um, before we get up out of here, I want to ask you a couple more things. So are there any assumptions, any stereotypes that you see in your field, which is higher education / athletics, in a collegiate setting, any stereotypes about women that you would like to see demolished or changed?
Yeah, I think some stereotypes, I think in general, whether it's like women in any type of industries, either like one, um, when we speak up, if we're like aggressive. And I think that's something that sometimes comes to mind, or I think another thing as well is sometimes, um, if people don't necessarily like value in terms of like people, like obviously there's women that has families, but then sometimes I do think that sometimes people like also don't value like, I mean, like single women in general, like just because like we don't may have a family does not mean like we need to be working like 14 to 15 hours. So I think
Right.
that's something that work, not necessarily work life balance, but like more of like a work life blend. And seeing that regardless if you have, and then I think that's something that I think both sides sometimes will shame each other, not like shame each other, but also like discourage themselves. Like someone that like has a family, like she might feel bad that like, oh, like I need to go pick up my son or my daughter at daycare, and then she'll feel bad she had to leave early, but she'll go on maybe like a couple hours afterwards. So I think that's something. And so a single person could be like, well, I don't have a family, so I'm gonna just stay in the office till like 7 because like
Mhm.
no, like I don't have technically don't know and I don't have to go anywhere. And I think throughout the pandemic, people have realized that your your own health is so much more important than like staying on something till like 7 p.m. And I don't think that's just like women in general. That's just literally everybody. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't gotta be somewhere at like 9 if I'm gonna get it all done, or like at 8:30 or 8. And um also like working from home is something, if like some people that like to work from home, like being able to work in some type of hybrid capacity, I think moving on is something that I am definitely I am for.
Yeah.
Obviously I miss in-person events. My job are students and events, and not being able to do in-person events is like a big piece of my job. But
Yeah.
most of these things have gone still through Zoom in a virtual capacity. And some of them actually work better virtually than they do in person. So I think moving forward, as we look to program, what are things that we can continue to do, like over Zoom virtually? Obviously, people are going to go back to going to class and stuff like that. So like video fatigue isn't going to be as prevalent as it is now.
Yeah.
But if we are doing an event with alumni, I don't have to limit myself to just people in Louisville anymore. I get to do things with like people like across the country. Maybe not our people that are playing professionally like overseas, but being able to limit myself to more places is something that I know that we definitely are looking forward to. But so definitely like work life blend, huge. Um, Another, yeah, stereotype of work, like we're like aggressive or we're too passive. It's like I can't be too forward, but I also can't be too passive,
Yeah.
type of thing. So I'm like, cool, like I have this like sweet spot type of thing. um and then I think it also comes into different stereotypes that come with different personalities. So whether if it is like I've done disc assessment a lot. So like you have people that are like you're dominant, you have people that are high energy. I can tell I'm kind of high energy. You have people that are more passive, that are just kind of like feeling out emotions and that kind of thing. And then there are those that are super analytical and kind of being able to work all the stereotypes and strengths and weaknesses from all the different personality types. I think that's something that more people need to be more keen on. Like if someone is like direct, doesn't mean like they're a jerk. It just, that's just kind of how their personality is. But if someone that's bubbly, doesn't mean they're not being serious. So I think working through those stereotypes as well, I think enhances work culture and work effectiveness.
Gotcha. And before we get out of here, you mentioned a very important word, culture, right? So from the East Coast, right? Puerto Rican, raised by Puerto Rican parents, right?
Mhm.
So how has your Puerto Rican culture or heritage influenced the way that you uh, see life and see the world?
Yeah. We are definitely a proud people. I think I mentioned that earlier, but very family oriented. My family is everything to me, but then people that I'm close with, like I kind of consider them family too. Like the amount of aunts and uncles that I have that aren't actually related to me, like, it's like a ton. I feel other cultures have that as well, but it's also prevalent in Puerto Rican culture too.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we are definitely very like loyal, welcoming. Um, and if anyone ever needs anything, I'm just like, sure, like what time, what do you need? Like if I'm free, I'm always probably gonna say yes. I think that's just my personality, but I think that's also how my parents raised me.
Mm.
They will never like close a door on anybody. So I think that's something that being welcoming, being warm, like, hey, like, do you want something to eat? Do you want me to bring something? Do you need a ride here? Like, that's something that I have always been grown up to do. So it is interesting when people like aren't necessarily like that. And so for me and growing up, it's always like, well, why am I the only one that's always helping people? But then also realizing, okay, well, that's how I was raised. Other people may have been raised differently. Not a bad way, it's just different.
Yeah.
And then I think obviously food is also a big thing of our culture. So I think we have like the best food out of all of the Hispanic and Latinx type of cultures, but might be biased. It's not spicy, it's savory, it's really great. So I think food is something that's really, music is obviously part of our culture. Getting together is something that's, I guess, also part of our culture too. So I think how this kind of transition into like my work to some capacity is I like working with people. I am an introvert, which is like surprising for some, but when I'm in a group of people, like I enjoy people. It's just
Mhm.
to recharge by myself
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
um, but I think connecting with different people, I think that's something that has just kind of been innate, like it's in my blood.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Well, we hope to get some more people connected to you by sharing your story, your success story, that is still ongoing. It's not at the end of a book yet, far from it. And we thank you for, all of the time and work that you do here on campus on a regular basis. So we're looking forward to seeing more amazing things that you're gonna do and the impact you're gonna continue to have on young women and young people. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right.